At the beginning of the film, we are shown a mentally ill woman being discharged from the hospital. Her problem is that she tries to hurt herself every time. She returns to her parents' house and starts looking for a job, but she doesn't really know how to do anything. Her only skill is the ability to type quickly on the keyboard. She finds a job as a secretary with a well-known lawyer and signs up for an interview with them. She arrives at the office and no one pays attention to her. She goes into the office and meets a lawyer named Edward Gray. He starts asking her about her personal life. He behaves strangely and says that the job will be boring. Her main task is to write to potential clients. He asks her to make her a cup of tea, and even she can't handle such a simple task. She gets a job, and for the first few working days she does not succeed and sometimes has a nervous breakdown. One day, she meets a former classmate and they start talking about everything, and it is noticed by Mr. Gray, who happened to be nearby. The next day, he treats her rudely and points out her mistakes. Because of the pressure, she starts making mistakes more and more often, and at one point Mr. Gray can't stand it. He invites her into his office and forces her to read her mistakes, and suddenly hits her in the ass. She is shocked, but he forces her to read on and hits her again almost after every word. And she doesn't tell him anything, because she really likes it. After that, he tells her to keep working. The next day, she makes mistakes in the text again and everything was repeated over and over again, and he forced her to do strange things, put a saddle on her, made her walk like a dog. In the evening, she reads an article in a magazine how to seduce a guy. She fell asleep thinking about him and had dreams where they make love. And the next day he makes a mistake in the text on purpose. She tries to hint at her desires, but he doesn't have time, he's all business. She leaves work and goes to the hospital to see her father, who is lying there. Sad, she goes to Mr. Gray's house to find solace. She tries to talk to him, but she cannot clearly explain to him exactly what is wrong with her. Mr. Gray doesn't understand what she wants from him and says goodbye to her. The next few days, Mr. Gray stopped doing this with her and threw away all the red felt-tip pens with which he pointed out mistakes. She kept making mistakes on purpose, but he didn't pay attention to it. She tries to attract him in various ways, but continues to ignore her for unknown reasons. She decides to make herself feel good and starts slapping her ass. But she doesn't get the pleasure she had with him. In fact, Mr. Gray has not cooled down to her, but is simply trying to suppress all his secret desires. She decides to repeat everything with her former classmate, but he is too soft and she did not like it. She puts a big worm in his letter and he can't stand it and invites her to his office. She bends down and waits for her punishment. He orders her to take off her skirt and underwear. This time he does everything himself. She finishes and orders her to bring a sandwich and fill out the paper. She leaves and he collects all the misspelled letters and all her photos and burns them in the backyard. The next day, he invites her to his office and asks her questions from the interview. He says it can't go on like this and fires her, pointing out her mistakes. Then he tells her to leave or he won't be able to stop. She says she would like to get to know him better, and he tells her that he hired her because of his fantasies. He tells her to leave. She packs her things and leaves. Outside, she starts crying. At home, she didn't tell anyone that she was fired and pretended to go to work, but she stood aside and saw a new secretary coming to work. She's trying to find a new boyfriend with the same hobbies. As a result, she marries her former classmate and on the wedding day runs away to Mr. Gray and confesses her love to him, but he does not believe her and she repeats it again. He orders her to put her hands on the table and tells her to wait for him until he returns. It's already dark outside, but she's still dutifully waiting for him. He watches her and checks how she does his bidding. The phone rang and she picked up the receiver with her mouth. He understands that she will obey him obediently. A little later, her fiancé comes into the office and asks what she's doing. He tries to move her, but she hits him and puts her hands back in place and says she doesn't want to see him and tells him to leave. A few days pass, and she's still waiting for him. Various people ask her to leave, but she doesn't listen to anyone. Gray realizes that she is worthy of him and arrives at the office where there are many people and police. He comes into the office and gives her some water. He takes her to the bedroom to do something with her. After a while, they got married and carried out their dirty deeds.